Hello, Ken. How are you this somber evening? Why is it somber though? That's the real question.
That is a big question. I'm doing well, Dan. And how are you today?
Um, I am doing well also, but tonight we have a somber topic. This is our shortest title ever, and the title is Death. And I think I know what it means, but why don't you get us started off?
So that's great that you didn't do the typical. Tell us what this is all about, because I don't know that I could. Uh, but look, we were just riffing about what is going on in our lives, and I was sharing with you that last night was the anniversary of my mom's death, and that even though we're 2 decades plus away from the event, it still registers, like it still hits, and just how powerful losing someone that you love and care deeply about is. And we had another sort of strange event last night where we heard this thud in the middle of the night in our bedroom, and turned the lights on to find our beautiful boxer keeled over against our dresser, just laying on his left side. And I thought, my God, he's just died tonight. Um, it turns out he hadn't. He was okay, thankfully. We took him in and had him evaluated today, and it looks like it may be a condition in his spine where he's got some pretty severe arthritis that we weren't aware of, and that he may have gotten up and just literally had a muscle spasm and not been able to stand, and he fell over and then was just laying there until he could regain his strength and move again. But it just in that moment made me think about how much I love that little guy, how much he is our family, and what it would be like to not have him there. And it just, I wasn't like trying to think about it. It just flowed through my mind. Like, we're holding him now and he's alive and he's breathing, but if he stopped, he'd be gone. And I think there's nothing that makes you more present than that. There's nothing that makes you more present than being with somebody. Like, we were with my mom when she took her last breath. That is it is an awesome experience. And I always say it was the best night and the worst night of my life, because she didn't have to die alone. She didn't have to die in a hospital. She was with us at home. And what a privilege to be there as she left this life for the next. And how horrible to watch your mom die at a relatively young age. But man, in that moment, there was nothing else. There was no past. There was no future. We talk about being the now, and we make our sort of feeble attempts at it. Nothing centers you. Nothing focuses you like that moment in time, or the consideration of that moment in time. And that's what happened last night. It just got clear on, like, how precious that dog is to us, and how precious every moment of life is, and how precious every breath we take is. And just in that, like, 2 minutes of time, everything stopped except for exactly what was happening right then. So yeah, kind of somber, but there's something about it too that is so incredibly uplifting, in that, like, we're here, we're alive, we're breathing, we have we have endless possibilities in front of us, and we don't know when the last breath is coming. So, man, I hope we're living fully right now. I hope everybody that hears this or sees this just recognizes the gift that you have when you take one more breath, and how precious that is.
So I believe it's Ryan Holiday, who is big into Stoicism, and one of the Stoic, I think, sayings is like, I think it's "memento mori." I think it's something like you too will die, or something. At some moment you'll die. And he just, in his Stoic things that he always says, he says that to him is one of the most important things to remind yourself about, right? Like, none of us live forever. At one point you will die. And death has always been I don't even know how to describe it, like an interesting thing to my brain. It almost like baffles my brain that you can have a conversation with somebody and then that person no longer exist on this earth, right? Like their body is no longer full of spirit that they can have a conversation with you. And anybody listening obviously can relate. They've either had a close family member, a close friend, somebody who's passed away, and that they can um, have the same kind of thoughts, right? Like the memories of that person or how precious life is, all of the things that matter. Couple things that come to mind related at the time we're recording this is one, Bob Proctor, who's very famous self-help person. You can look him up if you're not familiar. He's had, I think, 50 plus years of helping people, coaching people, providing content that's been really helpful. I was very sad to hear of his passing. I think he lived a long, full life. I think he was 80 or somewhere around that age. And then just this week, this was, thank God, not a death. But I got a call. I was traveling, got a call from my wife. It sounded very serious. And she had just found out that my daughter had an accident in cheer and had fallen from a stunt and didn't know exactly the situation, knew she was going to the hospital to meet her, knew something with her arm. And thank God it wasn't more serious. She did dislocate her arm, had a slight fracture. But just in that moment, you realize how fast things can go from just completely normal to something else. And then kind of the in between of a young girl and an older man who passed. We were going to mass this morning and just having a conversation related to this. And my wife said she heard about a mother in the school that she teaches at who had had a heart attack suddenly at 37 and just had passed away. So she left behind, I don't know how many kids, but just all of a sudden, so probably an undiagnosed heart condition. So it goes back to I think the reason to remind ourselves, like that saying, or the reason to even bring up this topic or have these conversations, I think is really just to go back and to remind us all that it's like life is precious. I have this saying that all that matters in life is life. The rest is just details. And I tell myself that or say that out loud because I realize how easy it is to be dramatic. Like this is like the end of the world, but it's not, right? Like this is just a moment in time. We can over dramatize and make things like bigger than they are. But really, unless this ends your life or is a very serious life changing thing, we have to see it in perspective. And yes, the cliche is true. And it's one of the hardest things for anybody to do, but it is to appreciate what is right in front of us. Like this day is precious because we don't know if we'll wake up tomorrow. So the reminder of death or this topic of death, I think is just important to have an appreciation for the life that we have as individuals, but also the life that comes from all of our connected people to us.
When I was in my early 20s, I worked in an ER, an emergency department, as a medic for 3 years, and we saved a lot of people, but there were a lot of people who we didn't save, and it was just tragic to have to tell um, or to be present with a parent when you're telling them that their kid has died, or with a kid when you have to tell them their parent has died. And to go back to that earlier point, memento mori, from the Latin, remember that you will die, and it is that ultimate centering, right? It's just that one thing. There's no controversy around it. No one can argue it. It is going to happen. We all leave by the same door. That's it. And it is that stark reminder that we don't know when. And to your earlier point about the mother who died at an early age, there's a French actor about a week and a half ago, Gaspard Ulliel, just brilliant rising star, incredible actor, and from everything that was written about him, a kind-hearted human being, was on a ski vacation and ran into another skier who was not injured at all. And Gaspar died from injuries sustained on the slopes. And just that the thing that made it more shocking was we had just watched a movie of his the night before, and then the next day, gone. And And it was another one of those reminders, and these have come in kind of rapid succession, just these ongoing reminders. What I'm doing my best to do with all this information and the emotion that surrounds all this stuff is just to say, are you living today with the knowledge that you're going to die and you don't know the time? In talking to my dad the other day, he's like, "You're young, you're 62." He's 96, so I'm whippersnapper compared to him. Uh, but what I had to come back to him with was, we just don't know. Like, he's had this extraordinary, long, healthy life, and we don't know when this thing's going to end. And so, I think I think where this is going, for me at least, and maybe this is helpful to other people too, if we get clear on it, we can let it go, right? If we get clear that it's going to happen, it's not, we're not meant to dwell on it. We're not meant to just stay in this space of like, um, it's kind of sobriety around it. But instead, I think we're just meant to acknowledge it. It's like, it's real, and I'm going to let that inform what I choose to do. If this were the last day, and my conscious choice was, I just want to sit here with my husband and relax on the sofa and eat popcorn and watch movies. And that was a great conscious choice, as opposed to, I'm going to be working on client matters. Great. But I think it just keeps coming back to live every day intentionally, live every day fully, do the thing that you want to do, because we don't know when it's coming to an end.
So a little bit of a side topic, but I heard a podcast this week where a bunch of millionaires literally speaking to each other, and they were kind of asking themselves, when is enough enough, right? Like, when do you have enough money? And they were doing calculations of this amount, and they were like, if you have this much, and then you had this investment or an annuity, and you guarantee to make this much, is that enough? And blah blah blah. And it really made me check myself and think to myself, like, wow, like, I care so much about money, and I have to ask myself, like, sometimes I'm like, no, I'm just, the answer is really, I'm frugal. I'm very frugal, and it is what it is. It's the way, like, I was raised with 6 kids in my family, and money was tight. We were very middle class, but like, we had to be really smart about the way we spent money, and I just adopted those same beliefs. And then now, even if I have enough, I'm always like, oh, that's too much. Do we really need that? Is that really worth it? I was thinking about those people, and they have, well, like, tons of money, like more than they could ever use. And I was thinking about like the ultra billionaires. I was like, oh my gosh. And I read some status like they could spend $1 million a day and it would take them like 300 years to spend their money. I'm like, oh my goodness. And it just starts to make you have this appreciation for like, when is enough enough? Or like, where can life, and they've done all sorts of studies on this, that life can be like, we have abundance in America compared to like a lot of the world and like third world countries. But really, it's like, it's a very minimal amount. Like, we have the basic needs of food, shelter, everything else. So once we have these like basic needs met, we often look for like, well, what now? Like, what challenge do we have? Because we don't have the basic challenges of like shelter and food and clothing and stuff. So you'll see all these people, and I really appreciate, they're looking to like beat death, right? It's like, I want to live forever. All these life extension doctors and doing all this kind of stuff. And while I think that's awesome and it's something to strive for, it's almost like a new goal. It's like, when everything else is good to go, what else can I do to beat the other people? It's like, I will beat them in my longevity, to live longer, to do all this kind of stuff. It reminds me back of like that look for the fountain of youth. If I can find the fountain of youth, right, then I can live forever. Or that theory of vampires, right? They live forever, and all that kind of stuff it's striving for. So I think it's like the flip side of death. It's like when either there's no challenge in life, or whether you just go, I'm afraid of death, because you don't believe in anything that comes after that. Then we often look to just go, how can I beat it? How can I extend life and go on forever?
There's a comedian I listened to a few days ago. He's talking about the fact that he quit smoking like over a year ago. And his advice to anyone who's listening was, don't quit smoking, because he hates his life right now because he's so miserable. And someone had said to him, yeah, but look at all those years you're going to get. He's like, yeah, at the end of my life, at the worst possible time. I want it like now, in the middle, when I'm 35. I don't want it when I'm 80. I don't want to have extra years when I'm falling apart. Like, I want it now. And I don't even know why I tell that story, except that I think that there is that notion of like can we extend it? You get a few extra years, you get a little bit more time here. This isn't a debate about smoking or don't smoking. Don't smoke. Uh, but it's just to say that we're always looking for something magic in the future, and I think what this week has done, what last night did, just pulled me back to now. It just pulled me back to like I got this moment, and when we got the dog home today, it's like I got my husband of almost 28 years. We've got this beautiful dog. We have a lovely home. We're not billionaires. We're not millionaires. But man, we got a good life. And it just gave me the most magnificent sense of appreciation for what I do have. And the fact that all of those basics that you talked about, Dan, are handled and I don't have to worry about them. And that's a pretty great accomplishment right there. And and it pulled me out of that that ongoing thought in my head, can I get more? Can I obtain more? Is there more to be had? And instead, for the entire day today, it was just thank you. It was just simply gratitude for being here.
And this is not medical advice. This is just my opinion. But I will say it's kind of funny that comedian and saying, no, don't stop smoking. Because that was really my takeaway to complete my thought from before and saying these millionaires and like, what is enough and all that kind of stuff was for the first time, I think I started to question some of my habits. And again, just my opinion, but I was like, for example, every year I work very hard to get to an ideal weight before I have our annual beach trip. And I think like, it's just a challenge and it's great and I should do it, right? Because whatever, it gives me something good to do. But then it's kind of going back to like, but the deprivation that it go through to get to that ideal weight for a moment in time to be a little bit in better shape, right? Or to have lost some weight and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, did I lose out on something by trying to gain what? So that's kind of the question is like, am I losing out on some of the juice of life, like some of the great things that could come because I hoard money? So if I make extra, I'm like, no, save that. No, don't spend that. That's too expensive. Da da da. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm missing out on some of like the enjoyment of what life has. Not to say spend frivolously, but maybe don't be so frugal. Maybe say, you know what, that's nice. Let's do that, right? Let's buy that nicer thing, or let's go on that nicer trip, or let's go to that nicer restaurant, and really like take more fulfillment out of it. And maybe instead of working so hard to cut those 10 pounds and like look a little bit better for that beach trip, maybe go, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy that 2 months that I deprive myself and just have a more fulfilled, fuller life. Literally, also my waistline will be fuller. But the point is simple. It's that sometimes you look at life and we're always planning for later, right? Like we talk about extending it further instead of enjoying it now. And again, back to that cliche, like live in the now, man, that philosophy, or like one day at a time. All of those are real, but it's really like fulfillment in what you have available to you, which is today, because we don't know if tomorrow is even available. So why don't you get more fulfillment out of each and every day and stop waiting for the future or planning for something that may never come?